let's get started. So welcome to TechKnowCon and today's talk on AI and the future of work and L&D. We're going to have Mike Hruska present a talk today. Before we get started, I want to give you a little bit of a background and kind of like set up some ground rules for today. So please use the chat as much as you want. Like I said so far, introduce yourself. And as we do the talk, feel free to use the chat to ask questions. You can also do reactions. I don't know if you noticed, but that's a cool feature in Session where you can just put some reactions when you hear something that's cool or exciting. Also, TechKnowCon is a community that we built by us for us. So share it with colleagues and coworkers if you find it useful, and also follow us on LinkedIn. So with that, just a little bit of a history. So back in 2018 or so, I used to work at Twitter. I was running Twitter University, and I noticed that there was a community missing for people like us running learning and development at technology companies. And so a couple of us got together, so Rajan at that time at LinkedIn and Jenny Blackburn, formerly from Salesforce. We got together and we basically created the initial TechKnowCon. It was a conference. It was meant to be an annual conference. And the first one was at LinkedIn, and subsequent one was at Twitter. However, in 2019, we had pandemic happen, and so we've moved to online edition. So basically, we try to have a talk like this every month, and it's usually online like this, like as mentioned. There's also a Slack channel that's fairly active. So you can join TechKnowCon and techknowcon.io, and you can also join the Slack channel and have an opportunity to talk to your peers between the roundtables like this one. In a moment, we'll give you the link how to join the TechKnowCon Slack channel. So with that, just heads up that behind the scenes, there is a board that helps manage the TechKnowCon community. So we come together and we discuss what kind of talks to bring, what kind of speakers resonate. We look at the data, we set the guidelines and things of that nature. So so this is the board. I also want to mention that Tomomi, who you might have met, does all the heavyweight lifting behind the scenes. So you probably interacted with her. If you have any questions or anything, any issues, feel free to ping Tomomi directly, either via chat or email or any other means if you're on Slack, for example. I mentioned community guidelines. We're basically trying to create a safe place for us so that we have some basic guidelines. So you can see what that is here. It should be very obvious. And if you have any questions and want to kind of like double click on this, all this is also posted at techknowcon.io. That's our official website. Now, what is TechKnowCon all about? Well, as I mentioned, it's about learning and development, and it tends to be in technology forward or innovative companies. And so basically, the way we are thinking about this is how do we enable people at innovative companies to do their best work? And if you kind of unpack that, there are a number of initiatives that you tend to typically do, such as onboard new hires, provide some kind of knowledge sharing among your employees, provide for a way for anyone in the company to stand up and anyone else to discover learning opportunities, provide mentorship, coaching, office hours, and things of that nature, bottle up knowledge into documentation, usually of technical form, and monitor how things are going so that you can report on metrics and see the insights. So we call this team enablement, but it's basically an umbrella that encompasses a number of different initiatives that we find people like us tend to do to enable people to do their best work. So with that, before we jump into Mike's talk, I just wanted to also do a little plug for the talk we have next month. So we're going to hear from Joel and Dion. They spoke at TechKnowCon in the past on their dojo book. They have a new book coming up on coaching for learning, the art and practice. And so they're going to do a talk on that. But Dion and Joel are just fabulous. And a lot you can learn from them. So looking forward to having them in February. With that, I want to introduce Mike. I met Mike a while back, but most recently I saw him at the DevLearn, where he gave a talk that's very similar to the one today, and it was about how learning and development can leverage AI. And what struck me was that Mike's approach was somewhat different. At DevLearn, there was a lot of discussion about AI, but it was mostly along the lines of like, how do I have AI create more slides for me, or more, just kind of create more documentation, more course content. And it seemed to me a lot of that was sort of like, quote unquote, garbage in, garbage out. So it was just producing more and more and more content, but it wasn't really leveraging the AI to the point where it can solve my problems, as opposed to just flood me with more content for it. So this is where I found Mike's approach different and unique. And we're excited to have Mike present on how to use AI and empower learning and development at your organization. So welcome, Mike.
Thank you. You can hear me okay, I'll assume? All right, fantastic. Well, it's great to be here with everyone. I'm super excited about this space. I think everyone's really excited about it, but the question is, how do we start to do meaningful things that impact our organization? Get my slide share for you here. I have a great chief scientist that I've worked with. He was a chief scientist at Georgia Tech Research Institute for a whole bunch of years. And when I first brought him aboard, he jarred me in a conversation that we had. He said, Mike, what if there wasn't such thing as AI? What if it's just really good software? And I wrestled with that for a while, but really started to think about the idea that maybe we should just treat it like really good software and ask ourselves a different set of design questions. If there's artificial intelligence that is a thing, and we have human intelligence, which is a thing, how do we enhance our human intelligence? How do we augment ourselves as individuals, as teams, as an organization, in meaningful ways? So these are some of the design questions that we've wrestled with. I'll say this: I'm spent over the last 14 months or so taking our organization ourselves through this sort of radical transformation to be an augmented enterprise. We had a lot of lessons learned along the way. So I'm excited to share this stuff with you. But at the end of the day, the world is moving way faster than we think. Our organizations are a bit stuck. A lot of the groups that I talk to are stuck in cyber and governance and security, stuck with what do we need to do? What's one thing we could do? How do we build POCs? How do we think about this? But at the end of the day, it's really about augmenting our human intelligence, not just doing the work for us. I don't know if you've read Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow from Kahneman, but he talks about system 1 and system 2 thinking. System 1's like our improv, our intuition, and system 2 is more analytical and takes a longer time. And I would argue that GPT and other LLMs are really good at system 2 thinking. If you said write a 500-word blog about the benefits of dry aging meat, I could do it. It would take a while, but GPT would rock that immediately. But the question becomes, how do we tap our system 1 thinking? How do we help ourselves be more creative? How do we have thought partnership along the way? And so maybe a little bit, if you have something to jot down or your favorite note-taking tool, whatever that might be, but a couple questions to think about and reflect as I go through some of these examples and some of the trends and some of the experiences that we've had is, why would you want to use AI? A number of company leaders I talk to say, well, we want to optimize the annual revenue per employee. And I get it, but like, could we create workplace happiness? Could we create more connectedness between us? And if we knew why we might want to use AI, what might the hopeful outcomes be? And at the end of the day, I spent a number of years in government research at NIST. We got to have some metrics to understand that it worked. Whether they're purely quantitative or even qualitative is interesting. Bonus points for you if you can really define any use cases. And we're going to talk through a whole bunch of stuff and show some examples of things. Or if you can frame out a proof of concept, because there's no better way to prototype something than to prototype it along the way. Kai-Fu Lee says humans need and want more time to interact with each other. Really like this because a lot of things talk about pushing jobs away, but I think this is an opportunity for us to get way more human in the way that we work with each other and the way that technology supports us to do this. And I think that everybody understands that this is the most transformational moment in technology history. When electricity was discovered, we had to define transmission and distribution and transformers, and a whole lot of infrastructure had to be built. Everything that we need to distribute AI is already here in our hand, with our phone, with our laptop, whatever device that we might be getting. And I'll probably say more about it later, but I think we're just going to end up talking a whole lot more and typing a whole lot less based upon some of the experiences that we've been having as an organization. So much the same way electricity revolutionized the world, we have so many things that plug into the wall that do things that were never even thought of. And I think we're just at the beginning of where we can possibly be. Jim Fan from NVIDIA, I really like this tweet. Human progress is the Y dimension over time. We have such an opportunity to increase the human intelligence in our organization by using AI. And we're just standing at this precipice here, essentially looking at exponential outcomes potentially. If anyone follows Salim Ismail's work on exponential organizations, this technology used the right way can empower them even more. Greg Brockman says it's kind of like hiring 6 assistants. I was doing a workshop for a global manufacturing company. There were 28 people in the workshop. 4 of them had ever used any AI tools before. All 4 used ChatGPT. Once they got to their breakout session for the workshop, I saw 2 people looking at each other playing with their phones. And I said, "What are you doing?" They said, "We're using ChatGPT, of course." And I said, "How are you using it?" And they said, "We asked you for AI ideas in manufacturing." I said, "Stop. Start over. Pretend a 20-year-old intern named Sam just walked in. Tell Sam your names, your degrees, your tenure at the company, and ask Sam to ask you questions, and your goal of this workshop, and ask Sam to ask you questions." And they said, "Really?" And they did it. And it was amazing because in an hour, Sam was interrogating them, enhancing their creativity. And they went from, humans in the loop to computers in the group. People were standing around waiting for the next question saying, "Yes, this is great." So that facilitated kind of work helps us increase our human intelligence by working with artificial intelligence. AI has been around since the 50s. We had dark ages when we were a whole bunch of smart scientists were trying to get us to the moon and back. But what is going on is decades of progress are happening in weeks. There have been massive releases from every sort of major, well-invested, well-positioned tech company that's out there. And now we're starting to see a lot of trends related to feature development in software that we use. One of the things that we thought about was, well, Microsoft built Office and Excel and Access and PowerPoint and all those things to help them do their work. How do we approach our work? How do we think about what it is that we do? There are some interesting impacts. 77%, according to IBM, are thinking about or using or exploring. World Economic Forum saying 85 million jobs will be destroyed, 97 million new ones will be created. Things like the bank teller job will go away, but fintech engineer will be something. And so there's a ton of transformational opportunity in skilling and changing skills as we think about skills and transformation. A bunch of different reasons you might use AI, things to think about here. So as you're doing your silent writing activity, 9 out of the 10 most invested AI companies in the chat agent space are customer experiences and really focusing on CX. You could say CX and employee experience are with AI could be the same thing, and you might think about that as the orgx or organizational experience. But moving knowledge in an organization, thinking about how to partner AI for growth and innovation opportunities, thinking about sustainability, scaling, learning experience, because we radically changed. We have a Socratic tutor that we use to learn about anything. I didn't know anything about the industry domain for that manufacturer that I told you about. I spent 45 minutes and learned all about process engineering in that domain via a Socratic tutor. And it was super fun to be able to jam with other people. But the ability for AI to increase our human intelligence is a very interesting focal point that I want to make sure that comes across, and I'll show you some examples of that too. So HMWs for us, right? And I think these are relevant to all of us in learning. How can we really upskill and build people? not just build people with AI, but build the skills to help them better leverage AI. Use cases and pilots, your bonus points there, and then pilot to scale. We all have constraints in our organization, but we also have opportunities. And so the better we can do with pilots and POCs, the more opportunity we have to impact the business and impact the customers. At the end of the day, there's a lot of considerations related to people and culture. A talk worthy of its own hour is on governance, security, and privacy. But I really kind of focus on how do we build 1 or 2 or 3 people supported by an agent to help them do better work and more meaningful work in some ways, because at the end of the day, that's what allows us to amplify performance. And so we think about this as the intersection of a couple spaces. The augmented enterprise is where learning ecosystems thinking is employed. We're thinking about people, process, measurement, technology, experiences, analytics aligned with the business strategy. We act as an adaptive learning organization in that we're able to sense and augment our experiences to continue to learn about the external world and adapt internally. This is supported by augmented intelligence teams, humans paired with AI in meaningful ways. And what this really does at the end of the day is unlocks the knowledge flows of value in our organization and really enables collective intelligence at scale. So I think the easiest metaphor to think about is you have a real human org chart. And what AI allows us to do is think about a virtual org chart where the interface is human intelligence in the human org chart and artificial intelligence in the virtual org chart. You might think about things like, is there an HR agent in my organization? I mean, we have an HR agent. When we're recruiting someone, we send them the HR agent and say, talk to them about anything that you want. They'll tell you everything because they know everything. And HR is a stable data domain for benefits and policies and procedures and practices. So it's relatively easy for us to stand up something like that. So imagine having a virtual org chart that pairs up with the real org chart, so that the real humans in the org chart can be supported by multiple agents at the same time. Those agents can also work with other agents and with other people. There's a massive opportunity here to change the way that we think about organizational development, information flows, and knowledge creation as well. One of the things that's kind of a central theme, because there's so much power out of the box with ChatGPT, and it's great. And I'm hopeful that everyone here has been playing and prototyping and building things along the way. But for some of the examples that I'm going to show you, this is kind of a guide when you think about an agent architecture, because it becomes a lot more meaningful to use agents that really know about your business, that understand your products and services, that understand your business processes, and all of those things. So essentially, on top of that, and that's a whole data architecture discussion, you really need to be able to build some kind of personas out in a meaningful way. You can certainly ask ChatGPT, give me a course outline for cybersecurity for this, and it will do it. But if you say, you're a learning experience designer, you have 20 years of knowledge, Gagne and Bloom's and you told it all the stuff you really wanted to know, and you ask it to do the same thing, you get a radically different output. The other part of that is memory and context. So that's getting the most current information possible related to whatever corpus you're working on. And that's what really powers the agents. So working code trumps all theories, our firm belief. And so some of the things I'm going to show you are kind of built on this metaphor of, we got to understand the business itself and information that's key. And an agent itself has to have behaviors, has to have persona, and it has to have memory and context. And then be able to expose those through APIs. And then whether it's a mobile experience or whether it's a chat window or whether it's a modal that is somewhere, that's bringing it into the UX world for people. So this idea of augmented intelligence teams, a lot of people start to immediately gravitate to, well, what can I do to automate this job? It's really about thinking about how to atomize the tasks that are in with the job. It's really starting with the work. The model that we think about is a process asset model. Every organization is a process that consumes artifacts and creates artifacts in some way. And there's sub-processes within that consume artifacts and create artifacts. Question is, what are the artifacts that you could increase the value of? Whether that's a product concept brief That could be a statement of work. There's a lot of interesting artifacts. So, as you're going through your silent writing, maybe start to think about some of the artifacts that your team produces, and think about how they could be improved quality-wise, how they could be developed more creatively. At the end of the day, it's not just about automation. It's humans and human intelligence working with automation and artificial intelligence. Ultimately, you can start to really deconstruct jobs in that manner, and then redeploy tasks and reconstruct the work as well. And there's a huge change management component of this. I don't, excuse me, I don't want to underscore that, but that also is a talk worthy of itself. So a couple keys when you're thinking about building augmented intelligence teams. Number one, got to have literacy. They need to understand concepts, capabilities, some knowledge of regulatory items as well. Technical skills. I know we're all in technology. We all have different range of technical skills. What I've found in teaching a bunch of people prompt engineering, tradecraft, is that the more logical you are, the better. If you know how to write well and you're a good storyteller, then you can really create the right context that you need when you're designing agents along the way. Don't want to discount critical thinking. A lot of creativity and collaborative creativity can produce a lot of interesting outputs. But the key thing is adaptability, and not just as an individual, but think about this as a team competency, much the same way that a baseball player can run and hit and bat and slide, but it takes another set of competency above that for them to operate as a team to execute in a baseball game. As I said, working code trumps all theory. That was said by Philip Dodds. He was in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And for many of us that know what SCORM is, he was the person that brought DoD and Department of Education and the White House together. And so our journey, over the last 14 months has been to build the agents that help us inside of our daily work. What are the things that we do? Looking at the tasks that we do, considering the idea of processes and artifacts along the way. And so my daily existence starts here. These are 13 agents that I use, and I'll just briefly introduce them to you, and then I'll show you 2 examples of them. My mentor at NIST was a guy named Pete, and he was awesome, and we named our virtual corporation agent after him. He knows everything my company has ever done, every proposal, every document, every white paper, all of the things. When I'm thinking about something new, I'm talking to a version of Pete and telling him my ideas, and he's asking me questions and helping me synthesize and think about articles. Do a lot of product design, and so all of our product design principles are trained into an agent that allows us to develop product concept briefs, any of the artifacts, user story generation, because we thought about all the artifacts and baked them into our product development agent. I have an agent that doesn't know anything about me, anything about our organization or our history, but it's really good at interrogating you to ask you questions if you're unsure of a decision. Consultants, I'm going to show you some things related to sales enablement, and I'll show you some stuff related to learning experience design. But proposals, we do research and development work. I need to adaptively learn about things. So yes, I even have a team of intelligence analysts that can help me understand and read the tea leaves on something along the way. So, as an example, and just to give you a concept for how we bring these into like the world of UX, like GPT, you've got your chats on the left side there. In the center, this agent knows all of the sales methodologies, all the open source information, whether it be like Covey or Sandler or Challenger, all of those things, and is able to work with the sales engineer to help them do their job. On the right side, you see modes over here. So I might want to prepare for a call. I might need to do some real-time objection handling. Someone might need to understand true needs. And one of the features that the team really loved is role play, the ability to practice a phone call before you have it, the ability to ask the system to be the salesperson, and you to act as the customer. And it's been an interesting game changer. And then this is the concept of multi-agency. So while we have this expert in the middle that knows a lot about people in the world and sales, this is our version of our Pete agent here that knows everything everything and has a different take on everything. So as I'm going through an interaction, I can hit an objection and might be able to get some content. But if I click this question mark, it's invoking this whole other agent. So we're looking at a core agent that has different kind of modes associated with it, and then being able to bring in an expert to help me think through something in some ways. So I guess maybe a more practical, example is there's a whole bunch of things related to learning experience design that we need to do. And our question was, can we get 80% of the things that we need out of the gate? And we did a bunch of experiments with ChatGPT early on and said, there's probably a better, way to interact, with the system in a meaningful way. And so much in that same way, a core LXD agent knows all about the things that it needs to know about, but it has a number of modes that we're able to invoke depending upon what task, the human's trying to accomplish, so that we can bring AI to enhance the creativity and enhance the thinking of the person along the way. So just a little bit of a UI metaphor for taking that agent diagram that I showed earlier. Now there's tons of stuff behind the scenes in terms of like the IT architectural side. I'm just going to check the chat here. Yes. All right. So how do you get there? So we're all starting at the same place whenever we start. We're in the reactive stage. We may not know a lot about it. We may not have any strategy. We may not even have an approach for how we think about an approach. I would say that as a software company, we were in a unique position because we've done a bunch of AI machine learning work for a lot of years and organizational development consulting. And so after having a lot of DoD and National Science Foundation funding to think about a lot of these things, we're able to apply them very, very quickly, inside of our own organization. And so there are emerging organizations where you have strategy and governance and pilots and initiatives. We are in the operational to optimize gray area that's in between there. We literally have every single person in the company has some type of agent, whether that's finance, marketing has multiple agents, exec team has 5 to 13 different agents that we don't just work with individually. We work with in concert with thought pairs, as we're working on new ideas and new concepts. Ultimately, be great, and everyone eventually will get to optimized and innovative in some ways. There's a massive opportunity for transformation. This just gives us a little bit of a way to think about where are we and where might we want to get to, at some point in time. As I said, the change management element of this is a worthy talk all in itself. I actually have one coming up. Tomomi, I'll share it with you. I think it's the end of February with training industry. It's solely focused on change management and the fear of missing out or the joy of leaning in and what that can look like for an organization. So everyone's on their own journey, understandably. The 5 key steps that we've taken that really consistently over and over again have proved helpful in building our agent neighborhood is continually increased technology understanding. YouTube University has everything you need. There's a ton out there. I would really, really recommend building and seeking advice from your peer networks. That's been a super critical element for us. There's new stuff being released every day. It's a hard question of what to know, what to use, but consistently increasing that understanding and thinking about content intelligence. The other piece is really saying like, well, how will we learn the things that we need to know, to go on this journey? And how will we align with the business strategy? At the end of the day, if you're going to get investments that you need to build out your capabilities related to agents to enhance human intelligence, what's it going to do for the business? What is the impact? What are the barriers and understanding those things? I think all of us being in technology is super exciting because we're excited about it. And we're curious, lifelong learners. However, there are other people that we might need to motivate and shift their mindsets. And so, thinking about your battle card for, all right, how am I going to talk to people about this? How am I going to justify it? Because really, you've got to get to piloting and growing. Stacking the deck is key. choosing some of your early experiments to build with an agent are critical. Defining your measures of performance and measures of effectiveness are key as well. There are some game changer that I know this. It saves us 25% of the time to prepare for sales discussions. Follow-up is 30% faster as well. And when you start to combine in other things that you have, whether you're using AI or other things, now you're really starting to get an interesting corporate corpus of real-time context to the organization. And then scaling and sustaining. There's costs to define, there's costs to pilot, there's costs related to compute. So there has to be some demonstrable business outcome that's there, ultimately to justify this. So if there's one single thing that, in addition to the idea of possibility and enhancing our human intelligence through AI, I really, really encourage you to really use these items to drive your discussions, to drive your exploration. I mean, this is our journey started with why would we use it? What will we hope to achieve? And how would we know? Which is what your journey started with your silent writing exercise. But there's a work element to this, right? There's the dream and the inspire side of this. But the work element is, well, what do we need to consider? Well, IT is going to slap us on the wrist. Okay, what else? And really getting, a few people together that believe in the dream and understanding what are the considerations. And then the thing that really gets us often is not exploring the known unknowns. What do we know that we need to know, and how will we find it out? And so that gives us a clear set of next steps that we need to dig around, inside of the organization. And then what do we really want to do? What's the aspiration here? There are definable use cases. Every organization is different, but there are a lot of things that are the same. Between organizations, like we have to design learning experiences. We have to define HR programs. There's standards, right? And so, what are the pilots that we could do based on these use cases? What's a simple proof of concept? How can we put it into practice? How can we put it into play? And how can we learn from our play with that along the way? For any given area that you're focused on, I mentioned HR and an HR agent as like low-hanging fruit, because that's the content doesn't change and it's relatively static in general. So it's an easy low-hanging fruit item, but your data has to be good. And there's some amazing use cases that you can really unlock, but without data readiness, there are some challenges that might be there. The other element then is capabilities. Do I have the capability to prototype? Can I get the capabilities that I need from someone else in the organization to help me build the things that I want? Where do I get the capabilities to do it? And then at the organizational level, really understanding what the strategy is and how the governance will be accomplished. How will we communicate to our teams how we're using AI and why we're using it? How will we communicate to our customers about how we're using AI as well? And then, of course, there's the investments piece. Let's see. I was just checking the chat really quickly. So really, really, really key step is start with a team that believes in the dream. In Chris Hively's book, Build the Fort, he said, we all learned what we need to know in a startup when we were kids, when we were building forts. Find spare parts, find a team that believes in the dream, put stuff together, see what works, beg and barter and get other spare parts to make things work. But really, it's the key thing with the shared dream. It's this slide and really, really getting an understanding and building out a level of fidelity as a common viewpoint for what a future might look like for your organization. Really, it's about building prototypes and getting pilots. And like the race is off and it's running and we're all in it. We really are. That's a QR code for my LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me. But I really like the Stephen Hawking quote here. It's a race between growing the power of our technology and the wisdom with which we use it. And I think if we approach this from not thinking about things as a chat bot, but thinking about things as hyper intelligent agents that make our human intelligence a whole lot better, there's a huge opportunity for us to not just impact our teams, but to impact everyone in our organization. So I would love to go back through the chat, or if anyone has any questions to go in the chat. And I'm glad to hop back to any slides as well.
Excellent talk, Mike. Thanks. I'll bring a couple of questions that came. So Lizzie was asking some very specific questions about L&D. So if your job is to design onboarding, essentially your job is to help new hires get up to speed, how might you leverage AI? And and she also mentioned, well, there are some tools that already are built into, say, authoring tools, and that's one kind of path forward, right? Like, as I mentioned, like more content that is auto-generated. But if you're kind of applying the smart agent approach, what might that look like for onboarding new hires, for example?
It's interesting. I don't know what domain. Oops, I'm getting some feedback there. I don't know what domain you're in. So there's two ways to think about it. How do you use AI to build the tools that they experience, or is the thing that they're experiencing AI itself, right? So Storyline and other tools are starting to release more AI-driven features that help learning do a job. I saw someone post something about a useful 1,000-word prompt for a tutor that was open source. That's interesting. We have not open sourced any of the prompts that we have, because they don't just work. I'll say this: they don't just work they don't work as well as just a prompt. We actually have a middleware architecture that helps to select which language model might be used, and depending upon the assumed context of a human-computer interaction and the implied fidelity of the response, might actually run multiple models or spin up multiple agents across a model. So that is one thing that we found that really enhanced the quality of the output they were getting, is having some concept of digital signal processing that's in there. But I would say a great onboarding approach would be to have a Socratic style tutor taking them down the tunnel on what is it that we do, and really helping them ask the right questions and increasing their workplace curiosity.
Got it. So basically, having an agent act as a tutor and do the onboarding that way.
Yeah.
Speaking of prompts, Anastasia asked, how would you go about practicing prompts? Like, how do you actually figure out what may work for L&D specifically? Any thoughts on that?
The example I gave earlier, around tell it who you want it to be, right? I mean, I think that's a really critical thing, is really commanding it in a way. I'll pull up something else here. I'll give you a preview on something. I just got to pull a different slide deck here. And this is a process that we call MDAP, or metadata defined agent personas. Let's just flip slide deck. I'm glad that this question is asked. Can you see that now?
It's coming up, yeah.
Okay. So it's interesting, because what makes good prompting good is the same thing that makes good writing good, which is having a real good sense of context, giving it a defined persona, giving it tone, giving it some examples, and then providing what you really want back in terms of the format. And once you have those things, you're really able to give it really good tasks once you establish that, right? And so who and what the situation is, thinking about the why. Like, I'm in a workshop and I need to understand AI for manufacturing in the future, and I need you to be my thought partner and ask me questions, right? Your name is Sam. What do you know? What's your tone? Are you like cool? in some ways. I'll give you an example. I don't know if this may or may not work because of noise suppression, but I will try it anyways. This is an audio only AI agent that's exposed with a GPT voice named Surfer Steve, but Surfer Steve knows everything about cybersecurity. What's up, Steve?
Yo, just writing the AI data privacy movie. Stoked you're here. What's up? Got any gnarly questions or topics on AI and data? Let's dive in, dude.
I'm chilling with my friends from TechKnowCon, and we were wondering about data privacy and security for AI. Can you tell us a little bit of stuff?
Absolutely. When you're hanging with AI, data privacy and security are super important. Here's the lowdown. One, data protection. Think of AI like a vault. You want to keep all the info it handles safe and secure. Encrypting data is key. Two, user consent. Always get a yes before using someone's data. It's like asking if it's cool to join someone's wave. Three, regulations. Know the rules of the beach, or in this case, laws like GDPR and CCPA. They're all about keeping data use above board. Four, training data security. Keep an eye on the data that trains your AI. You want clean, unbiased data like a clean wave for surfing. Five, access control.
All right, he'll go on forever, but in this case, right, we really worked the persona element of this for Surfer Steve. We really worked the tone. So he says things like gnarly and tube and other things, really thinking about hugely personal AI. And this is where if you have good build in this area with your prompt methodology, with out of the box, you can do a lot of really good stuff with GPT. I mean, and it only gets better. I mean, we use other language models too, but there's some pretty amazing things that you can do along the way. Let's see here. So kind of a practical example here. On the right, so on the left is the way that you might think about it. On the right is the actual prompt, and then tagging it back to persona, context, task, example, format, and tone. So this is what gives you the ability to really start building something that's more meaningful. Because I can say, imagine you're Einstein and you are blank, blank, blank. And because GPT knows all of the stuff, or any language model is going to know enough of the stuff. It's when you bring that context to the forefront of what you're doing from an instruction standpoint, that's where it gets super, super useful very, very quickly.
Got it. So switching from the persona of the agent to the persona of the user, I found this question from Ron interesting. And essentially, who do you recommend we start with? Senior people or junior people?
Both. So let me make sure I understand the question. Could you repeat the question? I'm trying to see it in the chat here.
Yeah, yeah. Feel free to read it.
Oh. That's the bronze question. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, honestly, you have really good prompt skills and you don't really get hallucination. I can get anything to hallucinate. I actually worked with an author who wrote a New York Times bestselling book and built some tools like I showed you to help them write their next book with their ghostwriter. The first one they wrote in 4 months. The second one with the AI support they wrote in 3 weeks. So it's pretty interesting. I think you got to test it on a range of different users. You've got to get users, just like we test on anything. We wouldn't test with users that are going to love the chocolate covered unicorn. We want to test with everybody that's there. And I really think using some of the prompt methodologies that I shared with you, you won't really see much hallucination. Now, the other thing that helps to contextualize stuff more is like the concept of like vector databases and RAG. That's what really gives you the constraints. And then where things like middleware engineering come into play, you can write your rules not just in prompt, but in the middleware side and signal processing wise, that say, if you don't know from our vector store, don't go to GPT and ask. Don't make anything up, basically. And you can really put significant guardrails on there. And because I have some agents that are running for like as an SOP agent for thousands of SOPs for like global logistics. It can never hallucinate. It can never tell you that that flashing red light on the machine is wrong. And it has to give you authoritative sources along the way.
Got it. So speaking of how to actually do that, there are a few questions along the lines of which model do you use? How do you decide which model to use? And it also touches not only the choosing the model, to your point, to have a domain-specific understanding, but also from a security standpoint. Like, is it a public model? Is it a private? How do you make sure it's anonymized if it needs to be, that sort of thing? So like, what rubber meets the road, how do we actually implement this? How would you go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you definitely don't want your company's data being put into ChatGPT. I know a lot of people that sneakernet a lot of stuff, but even the $20 a month version, that's not enough for privacy and data security. You want an enterprise version of that. So there are two ways to approach it from a network topology standpoint. You could use Azure, you could use, or AWS and run GPT on Azure or run Bedrock on AWS and have that connected into your cloud infrastructure. The other thing that some organizations are doing as well is saying, well, maybe we don't need that big model for the following reasons. Something like Llama might work. We're going to run that inside of our own infrastructure. And then there's a whole bunch of GPU compute rent startups out there like RunPod and others that if you put something there and you have the right layer of security, then only your cloud is connecting to that in some ways.
Got it. And I think that also touches on in the security and like how to actually properly do it in an enterprise. There was another question on that. So thank you for that. Any other questions? Anything else that I might have missed that anybody wants to ask? This is an interesting one. How do you fund this?
Yeah, you got to get scrappy. Right? This is why we refer it on our team. I'll just tell you what we call it the psycho factor. It's like, I can build something tonight and I'll show you guys tomorrow, right? And so this is where you're gonna get scrappy. Go to your network, build your knowledge, build useful on a dime, and show that it's worth $1,000 to the organization and demonstrate. But yeah, everyone's in budget crunch, and everyone in L&D, we all get robbed all the time in our budgets consistently. I don't know why that is, but it sure does happen.
Yeah, so basically show some quick wins and just get going and just hack something together to prove the concept, right?
Yeah, and I would add this. I threw it in the chat earlier, but helping to educate the organization around what the outcomes can be for augmenting people and processes, and really dragging them along. And these are a bunch of ATD articles from me and Dr. Christina Bars. That really can take some of the concepts that I talked here further about and give you educational pieces to educate your internal customers about why we would do such a thing.
Got it. And this is a little bit of a different question about entering the workforce and how to think about AI.
Yeah, you should be building your skills. And any resume that we look at, we're like, what's on your tech stack for AI? Whether it's a marketing person or anyone. And I work closely with our local university here, and we do some boot camps for students as well. And it's super important to know how to use it. With what Microsoft's doing with Office Copilot, that's a great place to start. To start being a really functional, productive Office user, if that's your tech stack. And there are other ones that that are out there. but learn the tools, build your personal toolbox for the things that you like to do, and what your superpowers are, and enhance your superpowers with AI, whether you're a songwriter or an instructional designer.
Cool. Thank you. And I think people had some problems with the link, the bit.ly link that you shared, but I think that's been fixed. Okay, cool. So we have the bit.ly, the corrected link. Awesome. Any other final questions for Mike on how to use AI in the context of L&D? Well, with that, I just want to, Mike, I want to thank you. I just wanted also to remind everyone that Mike is on the TechKnowCon channel. So if you want to engage, feel free. We'll share the presentation. We will create a recording and a short summary of that as well. So look out for that. We'll reach out probably via email. And stay tuned for future TechKnowCon events. As I mentioned, we have Joel and Dion present in February. And we're looking forward to that. So join Slack, stay tuned, and join us next month. Mike, thank you so much. Always fun to be learning from you and getting inspired.
Thanks. Great jamming with you as always.
Thank you all. Great to see everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye.